The Abandoned Amusement Park. Chapter 1. The Dare. The snow was relentless, falling in thick, heavy flakes that blanketed Maplewood in a sparkling white coat. The town, usually bustling during the holidays, had gone eerily quiet as the storm rolled in. Christmas lights twinkled faintly under layers of frost, and the only sounds were the crunch of boots on snow and the occasional whistle of the wind. 4 figures trudged through the snow-covered streets, their breaths fogging the air. Emma led the group, her flashlight slicing through the darkness. She glanced back at her friends with a grin. "Come on, you're not chickening out now, are you?" she teased. Alex rolled his eyes. "I'm not chickening out, Emma. I just think this is, dumb. It's freezing out here, and we could be inside drinking hot cocoa instead of chasing ghosts." "Ghosts?" Sam laughed nervously. "Who said anything about ghosts?" "Everyone," Lily muttered, pulling her scarf tighter around her face. She wasn't a fan of this plan, but she wasn't about to let Emma call her a coward. "The whole town says that place is haunted." "That's why we're going," Emma said, her excitement unshaken. "Frostland Amusement Park has been abandoned for years. Think about the stories we'll have if we actually go inside." Sam adjusted his camera, making sure it was still recording. "Stories or evidence? Because if I catch something creepy on film, we're going viral for sure." The group trudged on until they reached their destination, Frostland Amusement Park. The gates, once festive and welcoming with candy cane stripes, were now rusted and sagging under the weight of the snow. Beyond the gates, the park loomed in the darkness, its broken rides jutting out like skeletal remains. Emma pushed open the gate, the creak echoing through the still night. She turned to her friends. "Last chance to back out." No one moved, though Alex hesitated before stepping forward. "Fine, but if I lose a toe to frostbite, I'm blaming you." They entered the park, their boots crunching on the snow-covered pathway. The air was colder here, biting at their faces and hands. The once bright decorations were faded and broken, strands of Christmas lights dangling uselessly from lampposts. "I don't like this," Lily said softly, her voice nearly drowned out by the wind. "You don't have to like it," Emma replied. "You just have to keep moving." They passed the carousel, its painted horses frozen mid-gallop. The chipped paint and broken mirrors reflected their flashlight beams in eerie fragments. "This place is a graveyard," Alex muttered. "Coolest graveyard ever," Sam said, pointing his camera at the carousel. "Imagine what this looked like when it was open. Bet it was magical." Lily frowned. "It's not magical now, it's creepy." They moved deeper into the park, past rusted food stands and an ice rink buried under layers of snow. The Ferris wheel, once the centerpiece of Frostland, stood tall and unmoving. Its cabins swayed slightly in the wind, the creaks adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Emma stopped in front of the main attraction, a massive roller coaster called the Snowstorm. Its tracks twisted and turned like frozen snakes, disappearing into the darkness. She turned to her friends, her eyes gleaming. "Let's check it out." "No way," Alex said, backing up. "That thing's a death trap." "We're not riding it, Alex," Emma said, rolling her eyes. "We're just looking." But before they could take another step, Sam's voice broke through the silence. "Guys, did you see that?" Emma turned to him. "See what?" Sam pointed to his camera. "I think I caught something moving near the carousel." They all turned to look at the carousel. It was as still as before, the horses frozen under a dusting of snow. "You're imagining things," Emma said, though her voice had lost some of its confidence. Sam replayed the footage on his camera. The group crowded around to watch. At first it showed nothing but the carousel. Then for a split second, a shadow darted behind one of the horses, too fast to be a trick of the light. Lily gasped. "What was that?" "Probably an animal," Emma said quickly. "An animal?" Alex asked. "In this snowstorm? What kind of animal moves like that?" "Maybe we should leave," Lily said, her voice trembling. "No," Emma said firmly. "We're here, and we're not leaving until we find out what's going on." As if on cue, a faint sound reached them. It was soft at first, barely audible over the wind, but it grew louder, and soon there was no mistaking it. It was music. The group froze. The melody was hauntingly familiar, like an old Christmas tune played on a broken music box. It was coming from the carousel. "That's impossible," Sam whispered. Emma took a step toward the carousel, her flashlight beam trembling. "Stay here," she said. "No way," Alex said. "We're sticking together." The music stopped abruptly, leaving the park in silence. And then they heard it, a deep, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled through the snow. It was coming from behind them. The group turned as one, their flashlights darting through the darkness. But there was nothing there. "What's making that noise?" Lily whispered. The dragging sound grew louder, closer, until it seemed to be just behind them. Suddenly, the dragging sound stopped, and a single word appeared in the snow ahead of them. "Leave!" Chapter 2, The Whispers. The word leave stood out starkly in the snow, written with jagged, uneven letters. The group's breaths came in short, visible puffs as they stared at it in stunned silence. "Tell me someone did that," Alex said, his voice shaking. "Please tell me one of you is messing with us." "Yeah, because I totally took a detour to play in the snow while we were running for our lives," Sam snapped, clutching his camera tighter. "It wasn't there before," Emma whispered, taking a cautious step toward the writing. The snow around the letters was undisturbed. No footprints, no trails, just the message. "How?" A chill ran down Lily's spine, colder than the winter wind. "Emma, don't go near it." Emma ignored her. She bent down, inspecting the snow closely. The letters weren't carved by a stick or hand. They looked as if the snow had simply parted by itself. Suddenly, the dragging sound started again. This time, it came from the direction of the carousel. Sam swung his camera toward it, his hand trembling. Through the lens, he could see the carousel lights flickering erratically. One by one, the painted horses began turning to face them, their frozen eyes gleaming under the dim glow. "Guys, it's moving," Sam said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's moving?" Alex asked, inching closer to Sam. "The horses." Lily's breath hitched as she looked toward the carousel. At first, it seemed like Sam was imagining things, but then she saw it too. The horses, slowly but deliberately, were turning. "This can't be real," she whispered, clutching Alex's arm. Emma stood frozen, her flashlight aimed at the carousel. She wanted to say something, but her mouth felt dry, and her thoughts were jumbled. The music started again, louder this time. The haunting melody filled the air, drowning out the howling wind. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The silence was suffocating. "We need to go," Lily said, her voice trembling. "Now." "We're not going anywhere," Emma said, though her bravado was slipping. "Not until we figure out what's going on." "What's going on?" Alex hissed. "Is that this place is seriously messed up, and we need to leave before it gets worse." But Emma wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on something by the carousel, something that shouldn't have been there. A figure shrouded in shadow stood just beyond the horses. It was tall and still, its outline barely visible against the flickering lights. "Do you see that?" Emma whispered. "See what?" Sam asked, lowering his camera. Emma pointed toward the figure, but when the others looked, it was gone. "You're imagining things," Alex said, though his voice lacked conviction. "No," Emma insisted. "It was right there." Before anyone could respond, the dragging sound returned, this time from a different direction. It was moving, circling them, but nothing appeared in the swirling snow. Lily's breathing quickened. "Please, can we just go?" "We'll go," Emma said reluctantly. "But let's head to the security cabin first. There might be something there. Maps, keys, maybe even an explanation." Alex groaned. "Why don't we just run back to the gate?" "Because," Emma snapped, "this is probably our only chance to figure out the truth. If you want to leave, fine, but I'm going." Reluctantly, the others followed her toward the small security cabin at the park's edge. The cabin was just as abandoned as the rest of the park. Snow piled against the broken windows, and the door hung slightly ajar, creaking with each gust of wind. Inside, the air was colder than outside, and the faint smell of mildew lingered. Old furniture was scattered around, a broken chair, a rusted desk, and filing cabinets coated in dust. "Cozy," Alex muttered, shining his flashlight across the room. Emma moved toward the desk, her flashlight beam catching a stack of papers. She brushed off the dust and began skimming through them. Incident reports, she said, complaints from customers, accidents, and, she stopped, her eyes narrowing at one report. What is it? Sam asked, peering over her shoulder. This one's from the night of the fire, Emma said, holding it up. The report was handwritten, the ink smudged but still legible. It says Mr. Frost, the park's owner, was last seen near the carousel, but he never made it out. What happened to him? Lily asked, inching closer. Emma flipped to the next page. It doesn't say, just that his body was never found. A loud thud startled them all, followed by a scratching sound from the ceiling. What was that? Alex whispered, his flashlight darting toward the roof. The scratching grew louder, more frantic, as if something or someone was crawling above them. Then, without warning, a single, deliberate knock came from the door. Don't open it, Lily said quickly, grabbing Emma's arm. No one's out there, Emma said, though her voice wavered. Another knock. This time it was louder, more insistent. Sam raised his camera, aiming it at the door. If it's a prank, I'm catching it on film. Emma hesitated, then slowly reached for the doorknob. The others held their breath, their eyes wide with fear. She opened the door. Nothing. The snow outside was undisturbed, the park as empty as ever. But just as Emma was about to close the door, she noticed something on the ground. A small, neatly wrapped box sat in the snow, tied with a red ribbon. What is that? Sam asked, stepping closer. Emma picked it up cautiously, her fingers trembling. The box was light, almost weightless, and felt unnaturally cold. Open it, Alex said, though he didn't sound eager. Emma untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was a single item, a small key, old and tarnished, with a snowflake engraved on its head. What does it open? Lily asked. Before anyone could answer, the music started again. Louder and closer this time. The carousel lights flared to life, and the dragging sound returned, this time accompanied by faint, whispering voices. Run, Emma whispered. The whispers grew louder, forming words. You shouldn't be here. Chapter 3. The Snowflake Key. The whispers surrounded them, faint but unnervingly clear. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. Emma clutched the snowflake key tightly in her hand as the group bolted out of the security cabin. The icy wind bit at their faces, and the snow whipped around them like an unrelenting force. The whispers didn't fade. They seemed to follow, rising and falling in eerie harmony with the haunting carousel music. Where are we even running to? Alex shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. The Ferris wheel, Emma yelled back. If we can climb to the top, we might see a way out, or whatever's causing this. Are you insane? Lily cried, nearly tripping in the deep snow. We need to get back to the gate. It's locked, Emma reminded her. We have to find another way. Sam stumbled but managed to steady himself, his camera swinging wildly. I'm not stopping now. This footage is gold. Just keep moving. The Ferris wheel loomed ahead, its rusted frame towering over the rest of the park. Its skeletal silhouette was even more menacing in the dim light, and the swaying gondolas creaked as the wind pushed them gently back and forth. When they reached it, Emma held up the key. Her hands shook, whether from fear or the cold, no one could tell. This has to be for something here, she muttered. What could it possibly open? Alex asked, pacing nervously. It's a Ferris wheel, not a vault. Emma ignored him and scanned the base of the wheel. Her flashlight caught something, a small metal box embedded in the structure. She knelt down and inserted the key. It slid in easily and turned with a satisfying click. Suddenly, the Ferris wheel groaned to life. The lights along its frame flickered on, and the gondolas began to sway more violently. Why would you do that? Alex yelled, backing away from the wheel. I didn't know it would start moving, Emma shot back. The groaning grew louder, echoing through the park. One by one, the gondolas lit up with a pale blue glow. The lights weren't warm or inviting. They were cold and unnatural, casting long, twisted shadows across the snow. Lily grabbed Emma's arm. Turn it off. Whatever you did, undo it. I can't, Emma said, tugging on the key. It wouldn't budge. A low, guttural hum began to emanate from the wheel, growing louder with each rotation. The air around them felt heavy, oppressive, as if the snow itself was pressing down on them. And then they saw it. At the very top of the Ferris wheel, a figure sat in one of the glowing gondolas. It was too far to make out details, but its presence was undeniable. The figure was still, hunched forward slightly, as if watching them. "Is that a person?" Sam whispered, his camera now trained on the top of the wheel. "No," Lily said firmly, backing away. "No, it can't be." The figure moved. Slowly it straightened, its head tilting at an unnatural angle. "I don't think it's alive," Alex muttered, his voice barely audible. Suddenly the figure stood. The gondola swayed violently, but it didn't lose balance. Instead, it stepped forward, off the gondola. "Oh my God!" Lily gasped. The figure didn't fall. It descended, almost gliding down the frame of the Ferris wheel, its movements jerky and unnatural, like a puppet on invisible strings. "Run!" Emma shouted, breaking the group's frozen stupor. They sprinted through the snow, their flashlights bouncing wildly as they ran. The whispers had returned, louder and more insistent, swirling around them like a malevolent wind. The dragging sound followed, closer now, accompanied by faint laughter, high-pitched and distorted. "What is that thing?" Sam yelled, his voice cracking. "Does it matter?" Alex shouted back. "Just keep running." They weaved through the park, past the carousel and the shattered food stands. The laughter grew louder, more menacing, as if it were coming from everywhere at once. They finally stopped near the old ice rink, gasping for breath. The rink was buried under layers of snow, the ice barely visible beneath the frosty surface. "Did we lose it?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. Emma shone her flashlight behind them. The path was empty. The Ferris wheel was barely visible in the distance, its glowing lights fading into the storm. "I think so." "Great," Alex said, doubling over. "So now we're lost and being hunted by whatever that was." "Wait," Sam said, pointing toward the rink. "Do you see that?" At the center of the ice, another box sat, identical to the one they'd found at the Ferris wheel. "Another key?" Emma asked, stepping cautiously toward the rink. "Don't," Lily warned. "What if it's a trap?" Emma hesitated, her flashlight beam fixed on the box. The whispers were quieter now, but they hadn't stopped completely. "We don't have a choice," she said finally. "We need to know what's going on here." As Emma stepped onto the ice, it creaked beneath her weight. The sound was unnervingly loud in the silence. "Be careful," Sam called out, his camera trained on her. She reached the box and knelt down, her hands trembling as she opened it. Inside was another key, identical to the first but with a different engraving. A star. The moment she touched it, the ice beneath her cracked violently. A jagged line shot out from her feet, spreading across the rink like lightning. "Emma, get off the ice!" Alex shouted. Emma turned to run, but the ice gave way beneath her. She screamed as she plunged into the freezing water below. "Emma!" Lily shrieked, rushing toward the edge of the rink. Emma surfaced, gasping for air, her hands clawing at the jagged ice. The water was black and impossibly cold, pulling at her like unseen hands. "Hold on!" Alex yelled, dropping to his knees and reaching for her. The whispers grew louder again, almost deafening now. Shapes moved beneath the ice, dark and indistinct, circling Emma like predators. "Help me!" Emma cried, her voice breaking. Alex grabbed her hand and pulled with all his strength. Slowly, inch by inch, he dragged her out of the water. The others helped, pulling her onto solid ground just as one of the dark shapes lunged at the surface, shattering the ice where she had been moments before. They stared in horror as the shapes vanished back into the depths, leaving the ice eerily still. Emma lay on the ground, shivering violently, the key still clutched in her hand. "We need to get out of here," Lily said, her voice trembling. "We can't," Emma said through chattering teeth. "Not yet. The keys, they're part of this. They're the only way out." As Emma spoke, the star key in her hand began to glow faintly, casting long shadows across the snow. And from the distance came a new sound, the distant rhythmic toll of a bell. Chapter 4. The Tolling Bell. The tolling sound echoed through the park, deep and resonant, cutting through the howling wind. Each ring carried a strange weight, vibrating in their chests like a warning. "What is that?" Sam whispered, gripping his camera tighter. "A bell," Emma said, her teeth still chattering as Alex draped his jacket over her shoulders. "It sounds close." It's not close, Lily said, her voice sharp with panic. It's everywhere, like the whispers. Alex pointed his flashlight toward the shadowy horizon of the park. It's coming from the clock tower, he said, spotting the faint silhouette of the towering structure near the center of the park. Emma sat up, clutching the glowing key. We have to go there. Are you out of your mind? Alex snapped. Every time we follow one of these clues, something awful happens. First the Ferris wheel, now the rink. What's next? Emma's grip tightened around the key. This isn't random. The keys, the lights, the writing in the snow, it's all connected. If we leave now, we'll never figure it out. Lily shook her head, her breath visible in the freezing air. Or we'll end up dead. Sam raised his camera, the lens trembling slightly. I'm with Emma, he said. This is insane, but I want to know the truth. Besides, if we stay in one place too long, it will find us. Lily hesitated, then sighed. Fine, but the second things get worse, I'm done. I mean it. Without another word, the group trudged through the snow toward the clock tower. As they approached, the details of the clock tower became clearer. The once majestic structure was in ruins, its stone walls cracked and its spire leaning precariously. The clock face was shattered, the hands frozen at midnight, but the bell continued to toll. Is it moving? Sam asked, pointing at the clock hands. No, Emma said, narrowing her eyes. But something's wrong. Look closer. The shattered glass of the clock face reflected the moonlight oddly, almost like it was rippling. It shimmered, casting strange, moving patterns onto the snow below. What is that? Alex asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. Before anyone could answer, the whispers returned, low and guttural, accompanied by the dragging sound. It's here, Lily said, her voice breaking. We have to get inside. Emma ran toward the tower, the others close behind. The heavy wooden door was slightly ajar, creaking as the wind pushed it back and forth. Of course it's open, Alex muttered, because that's not creepy at all. Inside, the air was colder than outside, the stone walls radiating a chilling dampness. Dust and cobwebs covered everything, and broken furniture was scattered across the floor. Emma's flashlight landed on a spiral staircase winding up the tower's interior. The bell, she said. It's at the top. Let's just grab the key or clue or whatever it is and get out, Alex said, his voice tense. The group climbed the staircase cautiously, each step groaning under their weight. The tolling bell grew louder with every turn of the spiral, vibrating through the walls. Does anyone else feel that? Sam asked, his hand brushing the stone wall. Feel what? Emma asked. It's like the walls are humming. Emma placed her hand on the wall and immediately pulled it back. It's warm. That's impossible, Alex said, though he didn't check for himself. They reached a small landing near the top of the tower. A massive iron bell hung above them, swinging slowly despite the absence of a visible mechanism. Beneath it, a pedestal stood, its surface covered in frost. On the pedestal sat another box. This has to be it, Emma said, stepping forward. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a cyclone. Words began to form, overlapping and distorted. Turn back. It's too late. Turn back. Emma, wait, Lily said, grabbing her arm. But Emma shrugged her off. She reached out and touched the box. The moment her fingers made contact, the bell stopped tolling. Silence. The absence of sound was deafening. Emma opened the box. Inside was another key, this one engraved with a crescent moon. As soon as she lifted it, the tower began to shake violently. Dust and debris rained down as the bell above them swung wildly, its clappers smashing into the sides with deafening clangs. Run! Alex yelled. They scrambled down the staircase, the walls trembling around them. The whispers had become screams, echoing in their ears. The dragging sound returned, louder than ever, now accompanied by heavy, deliberate footsteps. They're in the tower, Lily screamed, glancing over her shoulder. Keep going, Sam yelled, nearly losing his balance on the crumbling stairs. They burst through the tower's entrance just as part of the spire collapsed behind them, sending a plume of snow and dust into the air. Outside, the storm had grown worse. The snow was falling faster, and the wind howled like a living thing. Emma clutched the crescent moon key tightly, her chest heaving. We're close, I know it. Close to what? Alex snapped. Getting buried alive? Or worse? Before Emma could answer, a new sound cut through the storm, the distant wail of a child. Did you hear that? Lily asked, her eyes wide. Yeah, Sam said, scanning the area with his camera. It's coming from the carousel. No way, Alex said, backing away. We're not going back there. But Emma was already moving. Emma, stop, Lily called after her. We have to see, Emma said, her voice trembling. If there's a child. The group reluctantly followed her, their flashlights cutting through the swirling snow. The carousel was eerily still when they reached it. The horses were turned away, facing outward like sentinels. The music had stopped, replaced by the faint sound of the child's cries. Where are they? Emma whispered, shining her flashlight around. The crying grew louder, more desperate. It seemed to be coming from the center of the carousel. Emma stepped onto the platform, her breath visible in the cold air. She moved toward the center, her footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. The others watched from the edge, too afraid to follow. Suddenly, the carousel lights flared to life, blindingly bright. The horses turned in unison, their frozen faces twisted into grotesque grins, and then the carousel began to spin. Emma, get off! Alex shouted, but Emma couldn't move. The crying had stopped, replaced by laughter, high-pitched, childlike, but wrong. The platform beneath her feet vibrated, and she looked down to see the wood splitting apart, revealing a dark, swirling void below. A skeletal hand shot out from the darkness, grabbing Emma's ankle and pulling her down as the carousel spun faster, the laughter echoing into the storm. Chapter 5, Beneath the Carousel. Emma! Alex screamed as she disappeared into the gaping void beneath the carousel. Her flashlight clattered to the wooden floor, rolling to the edge and illuminating the swirling blackness below. The carousel's speed increased, the grotesque horses whipping around like phantoms in a storm. The high-pitched laughter twisted into a cacophony of shrieks and cries, a horrifying symphony that made the group cover their ears. Help me! Emma's voice echoed from the darkness, faint but unmistakable. She's alive, Sam shouted, throwing his camera over his shoulder. He stepped toward the spinning platform but froze as the ground beneath them trembled. Are you crazy? Lily cried, grabbing his arm. You'll fall in too. We can't just leave her, Sam yelled, breaking free from Lily's grip. Alex's jaw tightened, and he stepped onto the carousel. The platform groaned beneath his weight, but he didn't stop. Hold it steady, he shouted at Sam and Lily, who reluctantly followed. Inside the void, Emma was falling, or at least she thought she was. The blackness around her was infinite, cold and suffocating. Shapes flickered in the distance, shadowy figures that twisted and writhed like smoke. Her ankle burned where the skeletal hand had grabbed her, and she could still feel the icy grip. But now there was nothing holding her, just the endless descent. Suddenly, the darkness gave way. Emma landed hard on solid ground, the impact knocking the air from her lungs. She groaned and rolled onto her side, coughing in the bitter cold. Her flashlight had fallen with her, its beam illuminating her surroundings. She was in a cavernous space, the walls covered in frost and strange carvings. They weren't like the whimsical decorations of the amusement park above. These were ancient, angular, and unsettling. Hello! She called out, her voice echoing. The only response was the sound of dripping water and the faint whispers that never seemed to leave her. She pushed herself to her feet, clutching the crescent moon key tightly. Ahead of her, a faint glow emanated from a narrow passageway. Above, the group had managed to slow the carousel's spin. The grotesque horses now seemed to watch them, their twisted faces frozen in an eternal sneer. I'll go in first, Alex said, kneeling near the jagged hole in the platform. He shone his flashlight into the void. Emma, can you hear me? Her faint voice echoed back. I'm here. I think I found something. Hold on, we're coming, Alex shouted, swinging his legs over the edge. Alex, wait! Lily grabbed his arm. She's alive, Alex said. I'm not leaving her down there. Without another word, he dropped into the void, disappearing from sight. Sam and Lily exchanged a panicked glance. We're really doing this, aren't we? Sam muttered. Lily sighed, her hands trembling. We don't have a choice. One by one, they descended into the darkness. When Alex landed, he stumbled and fell to his knees. The air was cold and thick, each breath burning his lungs. His flashlight revealed the same eerie carvings that Emma had seen, their angular shapes seeming to writhe in the flickering light. "Emma!" he called out, his voice hoarse. "Over here!" Her voice was closer now, coming from the glowing passageway ahead. Alex scrambled to his feet and followed the light. Behind him, Sam and Lily landed with grunts of pain, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. "Emma!" Lily shouted, relief washing over her face when she spotted her friends standing at the entrance of the passageway. "You made it," Emma said, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and relief. "What is this place?" Sam asked, pointing his camera at the carvings. "I don't know," Emma said, "but I think it's why the park was abandoned. Look." She stepped aside, revealing the passageway's walls. They were lined with carvings of the amusement park, each scene more disturbing than the last. The Ferris wheel, the carousel, the clock tower, they were all depicted, but twisted and wrong. The Ferris wheel held shadowy figures trapped in its gondolas. The carousel's horses had human faces, their mouths frozen mid-scream. "This is insane," Alex muttered, running his fingers over the carvings. "It's like the park, but cursed." At the end of the passageway, the faint glow intensified. It came from a stone altar, atop which rested another key. This one was larger than the others, its surface engraved with an intricate pattern of snowflakes and stars. Emma stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached for it. "Wait," Sam said, his voice tense. "What if it's another trap?" Emma hesitated, but the whispers around them grew louder, urging her forward. She gritted her teeth and grabbed the key. The ground shook violently, and a deafening roar echoed through the cavern. The carvings on the walls seemed to come alive, the figures writhing and twisting in the flickering light. "Run!" Alex shouted, pulling Emma back from the altar. The group sprinted back toward the entrance, the passageway collapsing behind them. The glow from the altar intensified, bathing the cavern in an eerie light. Just as they reached the cavern's entrance, the stone floor beneath them cracked, sending Emma and Alex tumbling forward. Sam grabbed Lily's hand and pulled her back just as the ground gave way completely, revealing a chasm filled with swirling shadows. "We have to climb," Sam shouted, pointing toward a jagged wall that seemed to lead back to the surface. They scrambled up the wall, their hands slipping on the icy surface. Below, the shadows churned and writhed, reaching up with tendrils of darkness. "Don't look down!" Alex yelled, pulling Emma up after him. Lily slipped, a terrified scream escaping her lips. Sam grabbed her wrist just in time, his face pale as he struggled to pull her back up. The shadows surged upward, inches from Lily's feet. With one last desperate pull, Sam hoisted her onto a ledge. They climbed faster, adrenaline propelling them upward. Finally, they emerged back into the freezing air of the park, collapsing onto the snow-covered ground. The carousel was silent now, its grotesque horses staring blankly into the distance. Emma held up the new key, her breath visible in the frigid air. This has to be the last one," she said, her voice shaking. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the park, cutting through the silence. "You have unlocked the way, but the way will not set you free." The snow beneath them cracked and shifted, revealing a massive, intricate symbol, glowing faintly in the frost. A map leading to the park's final secret. Chapter 6, The Heart of the Park. The glowing map in the snow pulsed faintly, casting an eerie blue light that flickered like a dying flame. It outlined the entirety of the amusement park, but at its center was a large pulsating red dot. Beneath the symbol, strange words were etched into the frost, forming a language none of them recognized. "What is that?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "It's a map," Sam said, his camera capturing the pulsating red light. "And that dot, it's where we're supposed to go." Emma held up the crescent moon and snowflake keys, staring at the intricate engravings on their surfaces. "These keys were leading us here," she said, her voice low. "To what?" Alex asked, scanning the park with his flashlight. "Because if it's anything like what we've already seen, we need to think about leaving. Now." Before anyone could respond, the deep voice that had spoken earlier returned, louder and clearer this time. "The heart must be awakened. Only then will the storm cease." The words sent chills through them, colder than the biting wind. Emma turned to the others, determination in her eyes. "We're ending this. Whatever's in the center of this park It's the reason we're trapped here. Alex hesitated, then nodded. Let's finish it. The group followed the map, the glowing symbol in the snow guiding them through the desolate park. The storm seemed to grow angrier with each step, the wind howling like a living creature. Look, Sam said, pointing to the horizon. Ahead of them, a massive structure loomed in the snowstorm. It was a grand carousel, much larger than the one they had seen earlier. Its elaborate design shimmered in the moonlight, but it was clearly ancient. Its once brilliant colors faded, its golden accents tarnished. The horses, unlike the twisted ones they'd seen before, were skeletal, their hollow eyes glowing faintly. That's it, Emma said, gripping the keys. The group approached cautiously. As they drew closer, they noticed that the base of the carousel wasn't wood or metal, it was ice. The entire structure seemed to pulse with life, each beat matching the faint red glow of the map's center. Sam's camera beeped faintly as he zoomed in on the carousel. It's not just ice, he whispered. There's something inside it. They peered into the translucent surface. Beneath the ice, the vague shapes of figures were visible, faces frozen in silent screams, their hands reaching upward as though trapped mid-struggle. This isn't natural, Lily stammered, stepping back. It's the heart, Emma said, her voice steady. She stepped forward, holding the keys out. The moment she approached, the carousel began to move, its skeletal horses turning in slow, deliberate circles. A voice, ancient and weary, rose from the ice. The keys will bind or break. Choose wisely. What does that mean? Alex asked, his eyes darting between Emma and the carousel. Emma hesitated, staring at the keys in her hand. The crescent moon glowed faintly, while the snowflake pulsed with a cold light. I think one of these stops it, and the other sets it free, Sam finished, his face pale. The ground trembled beneath their feet, the ice cracking slightly as the carousel's speed increased. The skeletal horses began to twist and writhe, their hollow eyes now blazing with crimson light. Do something! Lily screamed, clutching Sam's arm. Emma stepped closer to the carousel, her breath visible in the freezing air. If we stop it, maybe we save ourselves. But if we don't set it free, this might keep happening. Alex grabbed her shoulder, shaking his head. You can't know that. Just stop it, and let's get out of here. Emma looked at the group, her eyes filled with uncertainty. The storm raged around them, the howling wind drowning out their voices as they argued. Finally, she made her choice. Emma placed the crescent moon key into a slot on the carousel's icy base. The moment the key clicked into place, the storm paused. For a single, deafening moment, there was silence. Then the ice began to shatter. The skeletal horses exploded outward, their fragments dissolving into the wind like ash. The glowing figures beneath the ice screamed as they melted away, their voices mingling into a single heart-wrenching cry. The carousel collapsed inward, revealing a glowing orb of light at its center. It pulsed rhythmically, like a beating heart. The orb spoke, its voice echoing with both anger and relief. You have chosen to bind the heart. The storm will cease, but the curse remains. You will leave, but others will follow. No! Emma shouted, stepping forward. There has to be another way. We can end this. But the orb began to dim, its light flickering like a dying flame. The snow beneath them melted away, revealing solid ground. The storm dissipated entirely, leaving the park bathed in an eerie stillness. The group stood in stunned silence, the weight of the voice's words sinking in. We're free, Alex said finally, his voice hollow. Emma looked at the keys in her hand, her heart sinking. The crescent moon key was now blackened, its light extinguished. The group found their way back to the park's entrance. The gates stood wide open, the path to the outside world clear. But as they stepped through, none of them felt the relief they had hoped for. Behind them, the amusement park stood silent, its broken rides and twisted attractions bathed in moonlight. Do you think it's really over? Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma didn't answer. She stared back at the park, gripping the snowflake key tightly. It's not over, she said finally. It never will be. As they walked away, the faint sound of a child's laughter echoed through the empty park, followed by the tolling of a distant bell. Epilogue. Months later, a newspaper headline reads, Family disappears in abandoned amusement park. Search underway. Below the headline, a photo shows the eerie silhouette of the park's towering attractions. In the shadows, a faint red glow can be seen. The end.